You know, European agriculture is not easy to understand for an outsider. It's very curious to see what's going on there, and I love chatting to colleagues in Europe about these EU policies. All of a sudden, the green issue seems to be less important because there's a war in Ukraine. All of a sudden, the reality of producing enough food trumps the pressure of green agendas. All of a sudden, there are certain products which the European farmers were not allowed to use, and now they can use it because there's a war right next door. As if the green issues are no longer there, or they are on the back burner. Look at the farm to fork strategy. We need to reduce the distance between the producer and the consumer. We need to better connect there. Because see how many of the emissions, see how many of the practices which leave an unreparable mark on biodiversity comes from elsewhere in the value chain, not necessarily from the farm. But food security no longer means that any country or even any continent produce everything which they consume. That's the ancient definition of food security. It will never mean that again. Today, food security means that you need to produce more of that in which you have a competitive advantage, so that you can exchange from the food basket for that in which you do not have a competitive advantage. Trade is one of the biggest determinants of food security today. Why do you need to exchange from the food basket? Because something can happen like what happened now between Ukraine and Russia. That's why it is important to have food to exchange for food. And I think this reality has not dawned on the EU policymakers. Personally, having so many friends on farms in Europe, I really feel sorry for European farmers. They have the best scientists, they have the best technologies, but they're not allowed to use it. They can be so competitive if they could apply their technologies, but they can't. And I don't complain about it, because back in South Africa we can. We are much more free to use those technologies. We are free to for example, use genetically modified seeds, which is not allowed in Europe. And yes, so many of our neighbors said, we will never buy it from you. But no sooner did they say it, and they fell into shortages. And then the questions people ask are completely different. Because you can survive without anything else, you cannot survive without food.